Good morning, my friends. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Lorraine Stidd, and it is my pleasure to be serving as your worship associate this morning, along with our minister, the Reverend Margie Allen. Our Director of Religious Education is Deb Little. For information about our in-person religious education class schedule and how to contact Deb, please see our website at UUFSB.org. A special welcome to any of you who are here with us for the first time today. I hope that you find among us inspiration for living and nourishment for your spirit. We are glad to have you with us. And since our services do vary each week, we hope that you will return often to really get to know us as a community of faith. Unitarian Universalism is a liberal religion, meaning we have no set creed you must accept to belong here. We share a commitment, orientation toward site addresses for these organizations are posted on the flyer, on the bulletin board in the sanctuary foyer, and the RE wing. The second announcement this morning is our General Assembly is coming up. The General Assembly
So last Sunday, at the 11th hour, I had to set aside the topic that I'd planned to address and had been working on for a week. The words just simply didn't come to me that morning when I usually find them all in order in the little sermon filing box in the back of my mind, just waiting to come out and be written down. I was distressed right here. And I told you so. But the service unfolded anyway with a short reflection on the weight on me and us of the invasion of Ukraine, and a little bit about my family history in Kiev, and gratitude for all we have the opportunity to learn together here about how to keep ourselves and our earth boat on an even keel, even in the worst of times. And I felt much better after the service. And I still feel good. And I hope it had the same effect on some of you who shared my despair that morning and said so. And I want you to know that I received some sweet care from you in the week that followed. Several lovely notes and conversations, some information on how to support Ukraine, testimony by some folks who found the service particularly meaningful and soothing. I received a link to a song one of you had found reliably comforting in times of uncertainty, and it was lovely. And yesterday I opened an envelope from one of you to find this hand-woven Ukrainian flag-colored loop of ribbon. So sweet. So if you're visiting today or otherwise early on in your exploration here, I want you to know that this is who we are. If we're not on a given day, we certainly aspire to be. Real, caring, supportive, connected, resourceful, creative, committed. This is how life is supposed to be. sweet, responsive, generative, graceful give and take in the course of a shared journey toward wholeness. So thank you. Our opening hymn today is number 1000 in the Teal hymnal, or on your order of service in our virtual sanctuary. Morning has come. A new day dawns. Once more the gift is given. We'll take it. So sing, sing, sing.
Our reading this morning is adapted from the poem, I Want to Be with People, by Dana Worsnob. I will begin, and Reverend Margie and members of the fellowship will share in the reading. When it is your turn to read, please stand and face the congregation. Often people say that they love coming to a place with so many like-minded people.
That we aren't always getting it quite right.
I don't want to be with a bunch of people who think just like me.
I want to be with people who value compassion, justice, love, and truth, though they have different thoughts and opinions about all sorts of things. I want to be with independent-minded people of good heart.
I want to be in beloved community where I don't have to think like everyone else to be loved, to be eligible for salvation.
Oh, is it me?
Yeah.
Sorry. I want to be with people who see me, in me, goodness and dignity, who also see my failings and foibles, and who still love me.
I want to be with people who are willing to walk the tightrope and who will hold my hand as I walk mine.
I want to be with people who feel their interconnection with all existence and let it guide their footfalls upon the earth. I want to be with people who
who support, encourage, and even challenge each other to be more compassionate and ethical living.
I want to be with people who work together to move this fellowship healthy and responsive forward in time to new generations.
I want to be with people who covenant to be honest, engaged, and
with people who give them of themselves, who share their hearts and minds and gifts.
About the numbers on the chart, and that's that the green shaded columns that represent the year that we're in the middle of now. Those are estimates because the year hasn't finished yet. And I think the printed sheets actually include optimistic estimates that I've since revised downward based on advice from the Finance Committee. So they're good enough to observe basic trends, but shouldn't be used in any detailed way to analyze our current finances. Okay. In Sunday services during the pledge drive, fellowship members will speak about how they approach their own pledge decision in segments we call UU Minutes. So I'd like to finish my time with you today by sharing my own UU Minute. I support our fellowship because I think it's important that the fellowship remains strong going into the future. I'm so glad that Margie and Lorraine preceded my talk with that reading from UU Minister Dana Warsnap. It expresses so well the reasons why I want to be part of this fellowship and why I want to support it financially. I really do want to be with independent-minded people of good heart who support, encourage, inspire, and challenge one another. People who come together in a spirit of mutual respect to try to understand the world, how to understand how we should be in that world and how we can try to make it better. I've been a fellowship member for a long time. Some aspects of fellowship life have changed over the years as members, ministers, and the activities that bring us together have changed. But the core things that matter to me about this place have not changed. And we, as a congregation, get to decide how things will change over time. I make donations to other organizations during the course of the year, organizations that do good, important work in the world. Most of these organizations have many, many thousands of donors. So when I try to...
Because we're coming after you. We're looking for your dough. Kind of like Ted Lasso. We're looking for a new minister. Hope it won't be too sinister. Let's all thank Reverend Margie. She's been very hardy. Let's not be tardy. Let's make a pledge like it's a party. No more haste before it's too late. We all want to make the world a better place for everyone in the human race. Let's all strive to keep Dr. King's dream alive. And that ain't no jive. Make a stand and pledge what you can.
Did he say maybe he'd be better this year? Did he say that? I thought it was good. Thanks to both John and Ron for taking on the leadership of the pledge campaign. And I know that there are probably a dozen of you just burning to join them or do it next year, with one of them. So let us know and, take a number. But right now, in this moment, we're going to settle a little bit deeper into our presence here and the company around us. Listen to a few words from this mic and cozy up in the silence that follows as we look for the resonance of those words within ourselves. And then to surface from the silence into song. So words, silence, song. You are among people in this moment who are learning to embody the values and ethics described in the shared reading you heard before John spoke and Ron rapped. We are independent-minded people of good heart who recognize with the goodness and dignity of each person on principle, and who are drawn in empathy and compassion to companion one another through even the most challenging times. We know that our separateness is surely a practical illusion, if not also a spiritual one. Our lives are intimately and vitally connected. Our fellowship here offers a rare space and opportunity for us to practice a way of being in the world that strives to protect as a primary commitment the integrity of the whole we are together. Wholeness of every character and experience that makes up who we each are within ourselves. Wholeness of this faith community that rolls from generation to generation, even as the members that constitute it flow into and out of their lifetimes, into and out of this community. The wholeness of this magical and beautiful earth from which all life emerges and to which all life returns. We are ourselves to and with each other, and to and with the wider web upon which we depend for life. And together we listen for the call to action our principles and purposes affirm. And when we hear it, we step up. So during the silence we will enter in a moment, I invite you to bring to mind a time when necessity brought you together with others to address as a group a problem that appeared insurmountable but turned out not to be. What was that like for you? What was that like for others in the group? What was that like for the group as a whole? So find hymn number 90 in your book, or find it on the order of service in the YouTube chat, because that's the music that will summon us back from the silence, number 90, from all the fret and fever of the day. And I hope you'll sing. I love to hear the voices in this room. It's been so long. And let me repeat the question, and then we'll drop into silence. Bring to mind a time when necessity brought you together with others to address as a group of minds and hands a problem that appeared insurmountable but wasn't. What was that like for you, for the others in the group, and for the group as a whole?
It is our spiritual practice to share our collection plate in a way that reaches out into the world with our love and care. Our shared plate recipient for the month of March is new intensive care management, empowerment groups, and individualized support services for current and formerly incarcerated women and their children. The tailor services to the individual's specific need, whether for health or addiction counseling, benefits assistance, referrals for housing, or family court advocacy. They work to provide training in parenting skills and work skills, and they provide wellness programs. The vision is to give women the tools needed to become powerful change agents for themselves, their community, and their children.
Information that our board can plan and intervene in ways that keep the fellowship functioning smoothly and able to respond not simply to the usual caretaking expenditures and repairs for existing structures and programs, but to expenses that arise as we continue to develop our ministry to each other and the world around us. And our financial situation itself is also nothing like it was. We have a balance of $30 at the moment. I was like, what? What? Thank God there's been a steady improvement since 2010. As Greg Galuccio put it back in 2012, shade intended to anyone who worked back then. Over the years since then, we've generally received enough in pledges, in rentals, despite our tricky decision to end our 20-year relationship with Imagination Preschool back in 2016, of our faith education for youth and children. Leeway for new initiatives, community alliances, and equipment, and for some help with outdoor maintenance, support from a handyman, paid nursery helpers, and childcare for events and meetings. And in the last few years, the board has held fundraisers in the fall to fund specific projects, such as repaving our parking lot and improving the visibility and aesthetics of our Nichols Road-facing profile. The first such drive was one some years ago that raised $36,000 to put the solar panels on the roof here. And they have paid for themselves. We've never had a whole lot of extra money as a fellowship, and we've always had a relatively conservative relationship with any reserves we did accrue, most often through relatively large surprise donations. Over the past pot of money, annual gifts from generally set aside to cover major repairs, such as the planned repainting of our building exterior, which COVID nipped in the bud, or in the butt, to put it malappropriate. Endowment fund to the point that it's getting pretty close to the threshold, $350,000, beyond which we have an option to make use of a percentage of the interest income as governed by policies that don't exist yet. Bottom line, for more than a decade, we've been able to reliably. And to those of you who were not able to do that, who may never be able to, please don't feel bad. Pledges are statements of your faithful intention to devote part of your income to this good thing we have over here. Sometimes the most heartfelt and honorable intentions are foiled by unexpected factors. We've always rolled with the crap that you as individuals are forced to roll with, and we always will. We're in this together. Things have tended to balance out among us. Thank you for your wholehearted, though foiled, intention. And many of you, some in this room, I'm sure, responded to our appeal for help after Christmas by paying your pledges in full, and also by making very sweet and generous extra donations. Last I heard, probably a little more than $15,000. Thank you so much for your trust in this fellowship to put your gifts to good use. We will recover, for absolute sure. But in terms of our usual income flow from rentals, pledges, and routine fundraisers, it will definitely be an incremental recovery. Probably too incremental to make up for the deficit that mounted up over those 2 blankety blank blank, literally blank years before we is where the sweet side of crisis shows up. A decade ago, the writer Rebecca Solnit published a book called A Paradise Built in Hell that John Williams rushed to tell me about when he read it. In it, she observed that in the midst of a disaster scenario, when our lizard brain options seem to be reduced to freeze, flee, or fight, we actually often choose a 4th option, also reflexive. We choose to gather. We choose to gather for reassurance, protection, strength, and insight. One glaring truth about a pandemic disaster: this most generative instinct was essentially disabled. We could not gather. Gia Tolentino, writing for The New Yorker, describes the situation from which we're finally emerging like this. We are not accustomed to destruction looking at first like emptiness. The coronavirus pandemic is disorienting in part because it defies our normal cause and effect shortcuts to understanding the world. The source of danger is invisible. The most effective solution involves willing paralysis. We won't know the consequences of today's actions until 2 weeks have passed. Everything circles a bewildering paradox. Other people are both a threat and a lifeline. Physical connection could kill us, but civic connection is the only way to survive. Hence our angst and our weariness. Right? As I've noted in my accounting here, we did find ways to connect, to help one another, to pull together to keep the fellowship afloat despite the rigors of our separation from one another. We engaged in what's called these days the practice of mutual aid. These writers and others have dubbed it so, a pulling together, a stepping up to collective creativity, to solidarity and generosity with time and skills and assets. Rebecca Solnit asks about this breakthrough of collective joy out of the bleakness of our disconnection. She asks, what if paradise flashed up among us from time to time, at the worst of times? What if these flashes give us a glimpse of who else we ourselves may be and what else our society could become? It should not be so. It is not so in the familiar version of what disaster brings, and yet it is there, rising from the rubble, coming out of ice, of fire, of storms and floods and pandemics, it turns out, that joy matters as a measure of otherwise neglected desires for public life and civil society, for membership, for purpose and power. That joy matters. That joy matters as a measure of otherwise neglected desires for public life and civil society, for membership, purpose, and power. Survival is going to depend on how well we build the paradises of active love, sanctuary, refuge, and generosity. Love and empathy are acts of imagination. Imagination is an act of courage, of risk. Heroic love is what is going to get us through. Perhaps, that's the end of the quote, perhaps the door that opens into paradise, she concludes, at least for human beings right now, appears to us most clearly when we are all slogging together through some gruesome kind of hell. Bear this sweet truth about crisis in mind as we collectively here submerge in the task of resurrecting and reorienting this beloved fellowship, as we also work in a row and pass the bags along, moving in a common rhythm to get what needs to be accomplished done. Now, specifically, my ask of you today is that each of you, tapping into the truly palpable and magnificent energy of our return to this sanctuary, our reunion with each other, our hugs and handshakes, if you could, on that energy wave, do what you can to pledge what you pledged last year. Maybe a little more if you're able. And if you are pledging for the first time this year, and you can see your way to giving us $1,000 over the course of a year, that's $2.73 a day. Please go there, and more if you can. And if someone should approach you asking for an ungodly additional sum of money you can't even conceive of giving, think of the paradise on earth we build with our collective gifts. A paradise of active love, of sanctuary, of refuge, and of generosity right here on earth, into which all who need what we have are welcome. We will recover with all our help. Amen. This is a hymn that makes me cry. Number 318, We Would Be One. Describes for us in our closing words what she learned from good teachers about how life has been. Even more rarely, we manage to unite and move together toward a common good. We can think to ourselves, yes, this is how it's meant to be. rocking. And our benediction comes from John Wesley to our ears from the 18th century. Do all the good you can, by all the means you can,